Um, Waiting for Tom. We're having some trouble connecting. I think he should be along shortly, but we'll see. If not, we'll carry on. We'll do a short little live stream. Appreciate everyone being here. I hope Tom makes it. It's been about 2 weeks since we've seen Tom. Hare Krishna. Back to Tom. Mustafa, how are you? Sniper. Hey, Starseeker. The chat has not started. It's starting now, but I sent the link 3 different places to Tom. So hopefully he'll be able to connect with one of them. I know he likes to text. I sent him a text with the link, but once I hit the live button and get ready to let him in, it can't go back to my text. I can only go to Facebook Messenger. Hey, Tiger King. Tiger King, I'm okay. You just get Starseek out of your live. What were you doing, Tom? Starseeker says, there I am. I found myself. The last place we ever look. There's a story about that. All the gods in heaven talking about our true self, our essential self, and wanting to hide it, to make a game of it for mankind to find their essential selves. But they didn't know where to hide it. And one person suggested at the top of the highest mountain, and the guy said, no, they will surely climb that mountain looking for it. Buried in the depth of earth. Another guy said, nope, they'll dig. They will dig up the earth and find it. Someone said, how about at the very bottom of the ocean? And he said, nope, eventually man's excuse me, guys, ingenuity. They will find a way to get to, hey, Bisay, to the bottom of the ocean. And then a clever god said, how about inside of man himself? Here's a friend, Tom. Hi, Tom.
Hi. Wonders never cease.
Which link did you use?
I used the one that came on an email.
Okay, good.
I don't know I think what's happening is whenever it was on a message, it it has the whole link on it, but it doesn't necessarily have it all underlined. The only part that's underlined is the YouTube general station, whereas on the email, it had probably the whole link. So I would just suspect, that if I look on this, it had it, whereas the other one just would say YouTube, create live, join, and then that would be the underlying part, and the rest wouldn't be. So I think that that's probably the difference why I was having problems with the original link.
Okay, why don't we stick with email?
Yeah, I hopefully will be able to open it on my phone, and I hopefully got that down.
Good. So Tom, 2 things. One, Happy New Year. You've been missed the last 2 weeks.
Yeah.
And the other thing, to start us off, I'd like to know, Tom, why do you believe in me?
Well, that's a good question. And I'd like to, kind of go over that. I think we have to do a little preliminary work before we can really delve into that question, because most people, as simple as it sounds, most people are ready and they want change. They want peace, they want freedom, they want less fear and more clarity in their life. So when change doesn't happen, it's usually isn't because people aren't sincere. It isn't a lack of effort, intelligence, or spirituality. Change usually fails before it ever gets a chance to begin. And I'm going to try and explain what I mean by that, but there's a much simpler reason why it fails, but it's hard to see. And it's basically has to do with assumptions, not the assumptions that we consciously choose, but the ones that we don't even realize we're making. It's the ones that feel like truth. Uh, I'm not trying to, or here to try and convince you or to argue philosophy, theology, uh, or science. What I want to do first is to maybe slow things down enough so that we can look on how ideas actually work, how thoughts turn into beliefs, how beliefs harden into certainty, and with new assumptions, they almost never get a fair test. So uh, the reason is simply because new assumptions, when I say, Eric, you're perfect, whole, and complete, that new assumption isn't placed on a blank slate. Eric already has to lay that over a current belief system. And when we do that, we run into problems, okay? Because we're a number of things, but one thing is that we're bodies, and our bodies are hardwired for survival, not curiosity. Bodies evolved to assume danger first and ask questions later. So when an idea changes your identity, like I say, Eric, you're perfect, whole, and complete, or Eric, you're sinless. Who are you uh, to think that that's a correct assumption whenever you've already got an identity that says there's something wrong with you, there's something flawed with Eric? It feels unsafe. And it's interesting that the body's physiological reaction to uh, fear and excitement is basically the same. The only difference is the label that we place on it. Okay, so when we label something as fear, we don't explore, we protect. We play it safe and we defend what we already believe. And so why most assumptions are dead on arrival is that they don't really arrive on a blank slate. What happens is instead of trying to believe something new, we're not willing to suspend the old beliefs that we were certain of to allow them to really test those new assumptions honestly. So the assumption that I want to work with is a simple one, but it's radical. What if you are not a body? Okay. Now, I don't want to look at this as a belief, not as a conclusion, but just as an assumption worth exploring. Now, before we can really do that responsibly, we need to have some common ground because we need to know how thoughts, beliefs, knowledge, truth all interact. Okay. Uh, they're not all the same thing, although we tend to use those words often interchangeably. Unless we understand how they relate and how one morphs into another, we'll end up dismissing the idea like there's nothing wrong with Eric because it collides with something we already believe, something that you've been taught. So before the stories, before experiences, or any conclusions can really take place, we have to understand some certain terrain of how the mind really works. Because once we see how ideas actually work, we can begin to ask a different question. And it's not, is this true? But has this really been disproven? Okay. And that question changes everything. So with that, I'd like to, maybe talk a little bit about the idea of uh, this idea of thoughts, beliefs, knowledge, if that's okay with you.
Sure. Can we ask a quick question?
Yes, you may.
Uh, a friend wants to know, why did you choose the title? And maybe we're getting ahead of ourselves. Why did you choose the title "I Believe in You" instead of why you should believe in yourself? Is it the role of a teacher to be a mirror in which we see our truth, so we can see it in ourselves?
Okay, that's a good question. And the reason is because I can't force you to believe anything because you are your own decision maker. All that I can do is open up possibilities. If I can perhaps explain to you why I believe in you, then that maybe opens up a door, a crack in that prior belief system that says, I wonder why this screwball thinks that. Okay. And maybe if I've got some reason that makes sense, I'll maybe make a dent or a little crack in that already predetermined definition of what you are. Because what I'm asking you to do is to perhaps believe that you're something that you've been told all your life that you're not a mistake, that you're not unworthy of love. So, what I can only do is suggest to you or tell you why I might believe that you're not the body and the body is not you. So that's why. Does that make sense?
It does. So you're right. That was a really good question because the question provided an opportunity for an excellent answer.
Oh,
Thank you for that, Tom.
oh, okay. So anyway, so let's take this idea of the idea of what ideas really are. And first of all, they start off a lot of times as thoughts. Thoughts are like passing clouds. In and of themselves, thoughts really don't have any real creative power or energy behind them. If we don't place our attention on them, if we don't place our focus on them, they just pass like cirrus clouds. They seem like they don't have any effect. Okay. But if, and one of the things that you are as consciousness is you get to decide where you're going to place your attention. Okay. So in this case, if there's some thought out there and I decide I want to place my attention on it, I start focusing in on that idea. Now, whenever I start focusing on that idea, I start, I'll say, letting the creative juices flow, so to speak. Okay. The more that I focus on it, the more attention I give to it, the more creative energy it's going to pick up. It's, if we took the example of this cirrus cloud, it's going to start developing into perhaps a thunderhead. Okay, it's going to start picking up that energy. Now, if I start judging something as either good or bad, I start really putting a lot of energy on that because now I've decided that it's something that I either need or something I want to resist. And so now my attention, this passing thought, is now starting to morph into something more than that. It's starting to generate or collect some creative energy behind it to perhaps make it start moving into, in this case, physical manifestation. Okay. Now, in regards to beliefs, uh, we've got some focused attention, but whenever we start judging them, then that's really starting to stick. The creative energy starting to stick. Okay. Now, the amount of uh, power it has to manifest is closely related to the believability of the idea itself. For example, if I wished I was happy, healthy, and abundant, but my thought system already tells me no, all the facts say I'm not, what that is that's a more of a wish than a real belief. And as a wish, it doesn't have much creative ability. As a matter of fact, it may actually have a negative uh, polarity from the standpoint that whenever I say I'm happy, healthy, and abundant, and my other beliefs, whether they're conscious or subconscious, is saying, no, no, all the experience that you've had, what everybody's told you, what you've always believed is that there's something wrong with you. You're not worthy. You're, you know, not eligible for love, or love has to be earned. All these ideas come up. And so what it does is it goes and it says, that wish that you have, okay, we realize that based on our prior learning and what you are, it's a lie, okay? So uh, we cancel out that belief, or what we say, Eric wants to be happy, healthy, and abundant. That's what he wants. We're going to let him continue to be wanting to be happy, healthy, and abundant, but we can't let him be happy and happy, healthy, and abundant. Because if we did, we wouldn't give him his wish. His wish is always to want but never have. Okay, so what we have to do whenever we talk about beliefs, we have to talk about what they're layered over. And when they're layered over subconscious or consciously held beliefs that contradict what you're trying to achieve, we move into resistance mode, and what you resist persists. Okay, so you really aren't moving closer to your goal. You're saying that it'll always be something to achieve in the future. Okay, and we'll talk about that probably maybe a little bit later. But so there's the belief. Okay, now if I want to talk a little bit more about how it morphs into knowledge, okay, because knowledge is in common usage anyways, and we're going to talk about the common usage. Knowledge is a strong certainty. Okay, it's normally got some community agreement. It's supported by evidence. Okay, it's not necessarily 100% true, but there's a lot of evidence for it. The idea that I'm not perfect, whole, or that I'm not happy, healthy, and abundant, you might have all kinds of experiences that prove that. That's evidence. Okay. And whenever we have agreement and certainty, what happens is belief moves up the level to not just a belief but to knowledge that says it's a fact. Okay. If Eric or I believe it's a fact that I'm a worthless piece of dung, that's what I'm going to experience, because thoughts lifted to the level of beliefs eventually pick up enough momentum or creative energy that they will manifest, just a matter of time. And when we speak of time, we might all have to catch up to that time because we place it in the future. But that's basically the idea about knowledge. Okay. Now, there's something else that is higher than knowledge. Okay. And that's truth. Now, whereas knowledge requires typically some evidence and generally some agreeability, truth doesn't care one way or the other if Tom believes it or not. Okay. Truth just is. Okay. Me believing that it's true doesn't make it more true. Truth just is. Okay. It doesn't care. All right. So now we're going to jump into assumptions, because what we're going to see is whenever we come up with assumptions, how they differ. And assumptions are something that really don't require any proof. Okay. You adopt them temporarily so that you can see what the consequences might be. The assumption uh, is held uh, as if it's true, and then you follow the logic. If it was true, what would happen? Okay, that's how assumptions work. Okay, so assumptions are used to test theoretical ideas and to explore their downstream effects, okay, and to gain some experience without maybe committing to that belief. It's a test tube, okay. Uh, Truth is not claimed uh, that on this stage that it's true or not. We're just trying to test it out. Now, here's the problem with assumptions, and I already stated it, but assumptions have a basic problem that they're not placed on an empty slate. They're always placed over some prior beliefs. And if we look at what the psychologists and physiologists and all those people with the mind sciences tell us, is that if you believe something or you don't believe something, it impacts how you experience those things. Okay. So when I want to test an assumption, and my assumption is that I'm a great guy, okay, and I'm trying to layer that over my prior belief that I'm a jerk, my belief system, we might call it your ego, what I believe about myself, is in conflict with that new one. And because we're hardwired basically to stick with safety rather than challenge a new idea that might feel unsafe, we tend to let the old system win out. So I want to ask you maybe, um, are you familiar with the scientific method?
A little bit. It's been a while since I
Mhm.
thought about it.
You've thought about it. Okay. The scientific method, it's trying to do what? Is it trying to prove something is true?
Um, it's actually trying to disprove, isn't it?
Okay, you're right. You're right.
You know, they say even the clock, even a broken clock, is right twice a day.
Okay, well, no, you're right. It's trying to disprove something. Why? Because really, in reality, you can't prove anything definitively. By that, I mean, you can say this always happens, but we don't know that on planet such and such in a different solar system, maybe there's an exception to the rule. So, what the scientific method is trying to do is to take a hypothesis and not prove it, but disprove it to show that it doesn't work. And if we can disprove it, then we know that we can perhaps abandon that idea as wrong because now it's been negated, it's been proven wrong. So we have to modify our hypothesis. But if we test it, and whenever we test it, it's not proven to be uh, a fallacy. Okay, if it still has the possibility that it could be true, or it may be even supported by your test, then what happens is our believability increases, that might be a real possibility, that it might really be true. And as we gather more and more evidence or more tests that support it, what we uh, continue to do is see our believability increase, and maybe the hypothesis becomes a theory and maybe generally accepted in the scientific community or whatever. And this is what we're really trying to do whenever I say, I believe in you. Okay. Because what I'm trying to do is to provide some type of evidence that can support the idea that with or without a body, you still exist. With or without a body, you're worthy of love. With or without a body, you have the ability within yourself to be perfect, whole, and complete, to be happy, healthy, and abundant if you want. Okay. So uh, when we look at those things, and with the scientific method, you know, it's interesting on if you've ever been involved with tests before, scientific research. The gold standard for scientific research is considered a double blind study. Okay. Double blind, what they mean by that is that both the participant and the tester doesn't really know if we're talking about medical health study, perhaps whether one pill is the real thing or it's a placebo. Okay, because we know that the placebo effect and the placebo effect, basically, for those that aren't familiar with it, says that if, uh, and let's just take it in the medical field, if I give somebody a pill, even though it's a sugar pill, and I tell them that it has the ability to cure or relieve their symptom, and they have faith in me, okay, or that that's a possibility, their mind goes through all kinds of hoops to prove that it's true. And what normally happens on most tests is they find that the sugar pill will be very effective in also curing the problem. Okay, so a double blind study, they want the person receiving it to not have any preconceived conditions that they're getting the real thing or not. In this case, we can't control how they think well, they might hope that they really got it. That's fine. But it's interesting that also the giver of the pill can't also or shouldn't also know who's getting the placebo and who's not. Do you know why that's so? Okay.
No.
It's because if they know, okay, scientifically, they know that if I think I'm giving Eric the pill that will cure his headache and giving Sue the sugar pill that will not do anything, I have my own bias. And when the two people get the same thing, even if they have the same result, I, as the observer, will have a bias to think that Eric's result was favorable and Sue's wasn't. So even on that level, we've got science telling us that your belief, okay, that this person got a sugar pill and that person got the real thing is going to affect the results. So it's important to realize that. And that also proves this idea that beliefs or have some power to influence what really happened or what you experience. So,
Hey, Tom?
yeah.
We had someone ask if about the non-placebo effect. Have you heard of that?
Yes. Yeah. Uh, we've seen commercials, and they talk about the purple pill or the green pill or whatever it is, And then they, at the end of the commercial, all of a sudden they speed up and they rattle this really quickly. They go through a
Right.
ton of negative effects that have supposedly been known. Okay. And what the nocebo effect is really there's people that uh, believe that they should get those results so that whenever they take the purple pill or whatever, uh, and I've always thought it was interesting, they say, tell your doctor whether or not you should take the purple pill. They never say that this is what the pill is for. It's just that you're supposed to tell your doctor, hey, maybe I
Right.
need this purple pill. So, anyways, the nocebo effect is the idea that you'll get those negative results, even with the sugar pill. Okay, we'll give you the sugar pill and you'll get all the negative symptoms. Why? Because your belief system believes that that's what should get. Okay, so it just falls right in line.
So it's really the same. The placebo is believing in the positive effects, and the non-placebo is believing in all the negative effects.
Yeah, basically, whenever they test people and they give them the sugar pill, there will be some people that will get the negative results, and there are some people that will get the positive result,
Right.
even though supposedly it had no impact on their physiology.
If we were to tie that in with your assumptions, it shows
Uh,
the power of if we make the wrong assumptions about ourselves, we're going to be
or if,
experiencing.
yeah, or if we're taught the wrong things about ourselves, or if someone tells you that you're the Detroit Devil, uh, those all have power. You know, parents don't realize the power that they have, or authority figures, for that matter, peer groups, uh, that their suggestions can have on other people, especially whenever you're young and you don't have any uh, reason to distrust those people or to have enough belief that counteracts that new bit of information. So, this is why it's important to look at what we've been taught about ourselves. And I want to tell you why we've talked about these assumptions, but I want to say why I believe in you. Okay, why I believe you. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to give you some personal experiences that I've had. Because they're personal, that means that I've had them. They might have lifted me up into some sense of believability that because of that experience that is true, but it won't necessarily lift you up to that believability, okay? Because it's secondhand and you haven't had that personal experience. So, what it might do, though, is it might give you that crack in your prejudged belief system that maybe is negative ideas about yourself and provide a crack or an opening where you might be willing to explore the idea, what if I was not God's mistake, but God's miracle? What if I was a great person? What if I wasn't a jerk? Okay. And then to say, well, this yo yo that I just heard uh, said something, and I don't know if I believe him or not, but at least he believed it, and maybe I should test it. Now, whenever you do that, what you might have is a situation where you wish it was true. Okay, that's better than not necessarily wishing it at all or knowing that it was wrong. Okay, but now, because of the way things work, what happens when we start believing that something's a possibility, the universe starts supporting that idea. We start throwing energy behind it. And what happens is you start getting experiences that don't prove that it's true, but also don't disprove it. As a matter of fact, some of those experiences will maybe support this idea. And as you gather more and more evidence or personal experiences or secondhand information that supports that idea, then you generate more and more experience. Your beliefs start increasing, and then all of a sudden you start getting that shift where now it becomes maybe no longer, boy, I wish that that would happen, but that now it becomes a real possibility. But then it becomes something that, yeah, it's very, very possible. Then it maybe moves to, I know it's true. Okay, I am worthy of love. I am worthy of uh, being, treated with respect. So that's what I want to do. The idea that I wanted to say is that I believe in you, and I believe that you're more than what you've maybe been told about yourself. I believe that uh, that you're something much, much more. Why do I believe this? I could give you a bunch of science. I could say, well, there's uh, some evidence that doesn't prove that maybe you've lived in the past or that at death you continue, your bodily death, you continue to exist. But there's some things that support that. You can have near death experiences. Uh, we can have past life regression, past life recall. There's a lot of different things. There's life between life. Uh, where we have a number of people and they report, the experience on quote unquote the other side. We could look at all those things and those would not prove it, but wouldn't disprove it. It would provide some evidence. So what I'm going to do is give you some personal experiences. And this first one, I maybe would like to discuss is uh, the idea, people ask this question. If I lived before, why wouldn't I remember it? Isn't that a logical question? If you lived in the past, wouldn't you remember that?
You think so?
Yeah, you'd think so. So on the surface, that sounds reasonable. After all, if this wasn't the first time we're here, we would think we'd have some memory of it. Uh, and that would be the case. And for a long time, I really didn't have any real personal answer to that question. I could look at some books that talked about that stuff, but with regards to personal experiences, I wouldn't really had anything like that. But what I did have was a deeply painful relationship with my father in this life. Okay. It was toxic, it was abusive. And for many years, I carried a great deal of anger and hatred toward him. Uh, that hatred was never anything I questioned. I knew I was justified in my hatred and he deserved it and much more. But at the age of 24, when I was doing some deep inner work, something unexpected happened. I heard a voice and it said, "The father is the child of the man." Now, I don't know if you're familiar with that saying, but I immediately rejected it because I thought that's wrong. the quote that the voice should be saying is that the father is child of the man. That what I am as a child, I eventually grow up to be. But this was saying that I'm going to use my father was the child of the man who I interpreted to be myself. Okay. Well, like I say, I immediately rejected that. And I said, no, no, that's wrong. The saying is the child is father of the man. And I corrected it in my own mind. The way we do sometimes when things don't fit with what we already know. But that voice said, no, the father is child of the man. And then before me, like a movie screen, I started seeing over and over past lives where we had been together, okay, and that these folded one after another, different times, different circumstances, different roles. Sometimes I was the father, sometimes he was, sometimes neither of us was. But the pattern was unmistakable. The same rationale, dynamic, abuse, resentment, retaliation kept repeating over and over again, lifetime after lifetime. And suddenly, something became very clear. I had remembered because remembering hadn't been useful until that moment. Earlier, remembering would have increased my fear. At that stage, earlier, would have required me to let go of my story that I was an innocent victim. And I'd have to take some responsibility for my part that I played in this ongoing merry-go-round of abuse and revenge, that negative creation cycle that I had been helping to sustain. Okay. The memory didn't come to satisfy my curiosity. It didn't come to prove a theory. It came because it was needed. It came so that I could understand my part and finally break free from that endless cycle. What I saw was that my hatred wasn't new. It wasn't justified by this lifetime alone. And as long as I carried it with it, that cycle would continue. At that moment, forgiveness stopped being some moral ideal. It became a practical decision. If I wanted uh, the repetition to end, I had to let go of the role that I had kept on playing. Okay. And when I did, something extraordinarily happened. The emotional charge around my need to be right dissolved. I was no longer interested in who was right or who was wrong and how to get even. I simply knew that it was in my own best interest to stop adding fuel, to stop adding energy to that negative creation cycle. I made a conscious decision that I would rather be happy. That experience changed how I understood memory. To move me from victim conscious to responsibility conscious, I realized that memory was not missing because nothing happened. It was missing because it wasn't helpful for me to remember it earlier because I wanted those conflicts to continue. It was my ego's desire to be right, not to be happy, to be able to say, I was a victim. I did deserve my revenge. There can be, short time benefits to being able to claim it's not my fault or I'm not responsible, I'm a victim. Those are great things. So when somebody says, if I lived before, I would remember, I understand why they think that. But my experience taught me something different. Remembering is not automatic, it's purposeful. And when it arrives because you're finally willing to listen and to stop arguing for your rightness. I can go into like uh, past life regression, life between life regression, uh, and provide some scientific evidence for things as to how effective it's been in opening up people to other things. But you have to become open to the possibility that there must be a better way, that new information or new revelations can be given to that sleeping mind to reawaken and accelerate that learning process. Each of us is on our own perfect path. And that means you and you alone get to decide when it's time that you'll listen. So
Hey,
even though, the personal experiences uh, can't disprove the idea or can't prove the idea that you've lived in the past, it can help feed the idea that maybe that's a possibility.
hey, Tom.
So, yeah,
Um, on a on a personal note,
yeah.
did your relationship with your father change after this experience?
Um, I'm going to say no. And, and yes, okay. It didn't at that time, okay, because in my own mind, I knew that I was not a victim, okay, but that didn't prevent me from wanting to get even, so to speak. And although I could quote unquote forgive him, okay, it was because of my own self interest. It wasn't really true forgiveness. What I was doing was supposedly forgiving him for things that really he had done that had harmed me. And rather than say those were learning lessons and he was helping me to realize some of these lessons I had to learn. Now, whenever I said it didn't change them, about 25 years later, when I uh, realized that whenever I changed my story, whenever I reframed all my experience, and instead of making him my nemesis, and he was my nemesis, and whatever he tried to do, I figured whatever he suggested, I should do the opposite. Okay, so he was my negative mentor. Whenever I changed him from my nemesis to my greatest teacher, the relationship changed. Okay. And then what was done for my own self interest, our relationship just blossomed. And he was one of the few people that I could talk things that were of what I consider of consequence. And no, the relationship did change. It was wonderful. It was definitely healed. And what it was is it was a healing of my soul. Whenever I reframed him from uh, someone that was out to harm me to someone who was willing, and actually it happened whenever I wrote him a letter, and I wrote him a letter, and that was about whenever I was 45. And I thanked him for being my father and said that he was the greatest gift that I could ever have because he had always uh, been doing whatever I needed at that moment. Now, I didn't say that uh, he, what he was doing was harming me. Oh, okay, because that wouldn't have helped. This way, and it was all, and you all screwed up all that time, but somehow I managed. No, I said you were what I needed. Oh, okay, I just left it at that. But with that, in saying that he was my greatest teacher, that opened a crack in the door for that relationship. And uh, it just blossomed. And it was, I'm going to say, a miracle how it changed. So, to answer that person's question, no, that didn't change my thinking back then. But 25 years later, when I reframed all those past harms and said that those were trying to teach me that I needed to break my uh, revenge, uh, who did what cycle, then it changed. Okay. So that's the first story that I wanted to maybe relate. And if it's all right with you, I'd like to maybe relate a second story. Okay.
Sure.
And again, this is why I believe what I believe. Okay. Now, this happened about 30, 35 years ago, 35 years ago. But anyways, uh, was involved in um, working with a protocol that was discreating belief. I had become, going to say, powerful discreator of beliefs. And in regards to the protocol that was used, uh, one of the assumptions was that in order for you to discreate a belief, you had to be the originator of that belief. Otherwise, you had to create it and it had to be yours. And so you had to have the ability to take responsibility for that belief and I'll say accept or feel the consequences of that, perhaps uh, on a feeling level, not on an intellectual level, on a feeling level, and then uh, realize that you no longer wanted that belief, and there was a number of different steps, but eventually you would be able to discredit that belief. Well, uh, I wanted, I thought that it would be interesting because uh, my lifetime goal as a child was not to have to come back here. Okay. And so what I wanted was to discreate the idea that I was an autonomous, separate body or thing. So I wanted to maybe, we'll say, discreate my ego. Otherwise, what I had been told about myself, what I believed about myself, and create that idea of separation that there's Mary and there's Joe and there's Tom, and that we're all separate. So I wanted to just create that idea of separation. And so and this is not some drug-induced state. Okay. This was something that I was in total control of, and that it was a step-by-step process. So I started discreating various aspects, not only discreating things, but more importantly, traits. The idea that uh, uh, I maybe should judge things, the idea that I should label things, the idea that separation was real, that there was something apart from me. And I continued on the way and is creating, and eventually something profound happened. The belief in separation started to dissolve everything. And what occurred was my perception completely changed. I stopped seeing physical forms the way we normally do. Instead, what I perceived was a vast, luminous field of energy. Okay. Everything was intermingling, moving, flowing in and out, all within itself. There was no solid boundaries, there's no fixed edges, there's no me over here and you over there. There was just a living light show, dancing, blending, energy fields continuously in motion. Uh, and the experience was extraordinarily peaceful. There was no fear. There was no judgment. There was no sense of lack. I felt completely loving, completely loved, completely safe, and completely at home. I was in a state that I longed for a long, long time because I hated this world that I was sure hated me. Okay. And now I had finally seemed to reach my goal. So I was, I don't want to say ecstatic, but I definitely felt that I never wanted to re enter the world of form. Okay. And at that moment, that belief seemed confirmed that I never should want to come back here. I had no interest of returning. I had become what my handlers, the people that were, helping me with this thing, would have considered a happy zombie. All my judgments had disappeared. All the senses of separation was gone. There was no preference, no evaluation, no motivation to act in a way of duality at all. Uh, that was kind of what I had perhaps hoped it would be. But to my handlers, okay, they perceived that to be a problem, okay, because and I had entered and done this, well, my own free choice, but they were sure that it couldn't have been done, couldn't have succeeded. And now what they had instead of somebody that was a powerful creator, that was a, we'll say, force in world or a co-creator of his own world, a deliberate creator, they had got a happy zombie. And I couldn't function in this world. I no longer had any motivation to do anything. I just, to them, I was a zombie. And so their task was trying to get me back. And my task was, hell no, I won't go.
This wasn't
Well,
S by any way, was it?
pardon?
Was this
Well,
S?
no,
No.
no. But anyways, and so I was just fine. And then, fortunately, unfortunately, that voice I heard, and it uh, really, it was not a command. It wasn't urgent. It wasn't a fearful voice. It was completely peaceful. But what it said to me, it said that I had all the time I needed. Now, this was a revelation to me because I had always been in a hurry, had always been in a race to be further down the road. If I was, uh, you know, spiritually moving along the path, I wanted to be further along. Never was satisfied with where I was. I was an earner. Okay. And this the idea that I had all the time I needed. I never thought of time that way. I had thought as it was a race that I had to win. Now this voice was telling me there was no hurry. I could take my time. I could experience whatever I wanted, and that if I didn't have to change anything, and if I wanted, I didn't have to return. I could do whatever I wanted. I was totally free to do whatever I wanted. But then I realized when I started to look back, I realized that I hadn't completed my lesson for this lifetime. I wanted the experience now that only form and relationships can provide. If I quit now, I would eventually decide that I'd have to come back. And that wasn't my goal. Because without duality, there's just an intellectual understanding. I was that happy zombie, but I was no longer able to demonstrate what I was. Without separation, there is truth, but there's no opportunity to extend love and form. There's no opportunity to be helpful. There's nobody that wants to play the game that they're a victim or that they need their help. Being an abstract, formless oneness, I mean, it's great. I don't want to, complain about it. Okay. But uh, there's no way to demonstrate the various aspects of what you are. You know, what I had done, I realized, was short circuit the learning process. I hadn't failed, but I hadn't finished gaining the experiential learning lessons that this space time provided. And so the choice to return didn't come from fear, it came from clarity. I recognized that I hadn't completed the task I had chosen for myself, uh, that it required a body still, it required relationships, it required experiences. And once I saw that, the decision was easy. I chose to come back. Not because I was forced, not because I was judged, but because I wanted to complete what I had begun. That experience permanently changed how I see this world. Being here is not a punishment. It's not a mistake. It's not something that happens to us. It's a choice. We're not victims. We are willing participants. This world is not a prison. It's a place to learn, to grow, and to demonstrate what we truly are. And once you see that, everything changes. So those two stories I want to give you, and there's more to, especially this second story, but that's enough to, I think, hopefully uh, let you see why I might believe, why I believe that you're so much more, why you're powerful. So, you know, I don't know. Is there any question?
There was a question here.
Okay.
Tom, if the truth is that we are perfect now, is believing in us merely a reminder of what we have forgotten? Or is it an invitation to reach for something that we have not yet reached?
Could you repeat the question? I didn't think I caught it all.
Sure. Tom, if the truth is that we are perfect now, is believing in us merely a reminder of what we have forgotten?
Oh, wait, is what did you say? Meaning?
Believing.
What? The what? Could you spell it?
Believing.
Believing. Oh,
Yep.
the believing. Okay. Okay. Could you repeat that again? Because
Sure.
I have.
So, if the truth is that we are perfect now, is believing in us merely a reminder of what we have forgotten? Or is it an invitation to reach for something that we have not yet reached?
Okay. It's really a reminder of what you truly are. Okay. I didn't mention it, but let me tell you time, or something about time. Uh, Time is interesting. We perceive it as linear. We believe that there's a past, that then there's the present, and then there's a future, and then it's linear. Uh, and that's how we perceive it. But scientists are starting to say that that's probably not true, that maybe everything is already out there, that uh, time, the idea of going back or forward, is a question of your consciousness and where you want to place it. And so, what I'm going to say is time is the measure of change, but that's how we place it. But in regards to this, we have access to all the things. We have access to the past, the present, and the future. What we do is if we want something to be in our conscious awareness right now, we call it the present. If we want to have access to some information, but don't want it to be in our present awareness, we place it in the past. If we want not to have access of that information, we place it in the future. In the experience that I related with my past life or lives, I placed the remembrance of that in the future. Eventually, at age 24, I caught up to it. I caught up to it because at that time I was ready to bring it into my conscious awareness. Okay. Because it was no longer something that would drive me into more fear or drive me to, whenever I say more fear, whenever you start saying that you're responsible for things that you used to claim you were a victim for, that can put a lot of fear in someone. So that was a situation where I caught up to the my quote unquote future by bringing it in. So what we're here to do is, and what I like to think and what I tell people about time is we're taught that we're the product of our past. I want you to know that we're the product of the future. What you need to be aware of is the future is your destiny, and you can bring that future into your awareness if you give yourself permission. And you give yourself permission by, rather than believing that I'm a product of the past, realizing the past was stepping stones to get to your future. And now I give myself permission to embrace that future, to claim that new identity, that I am worthy of love. I am perhaps God's beloved child, not God's greatest mistake. And that's the truth. So I want people to look at the possibility. I can't prove it, but you're the product of your future. And when you do that, now you start becoming the deliberate creator of the present so that the future moves into your present awareness.
Thank you.
Okay.
We have another question here. Wanting to know your views on this realm being a hologram working on a program like clockwork within a simulation.
Well, I'm going to say I don't have a view. I understand the idea of a holographic universe, and certainly that appears to be uh, we're getting more and more scientific evidence to indicate that maybe this is holographic in nature, and and to start realizing that we're part of this oneness. So, in regard to that, I'm going to say, to me, this time space uh, continuum or dimension is our play school where we've come here to be or imagine anything that we want. Why? So that we can reawaken or rediscover the truth of what we are. If we want to have the experiences that would uh, confirm our belief that we're a jerk, we can have them here. If we want to have experiences to confirm that we're Mother Teresa, we could do that too. They're all available. And this is our play school. And eventually, what we're going to say here to determine is to actually be ourselves, to demonstrate the qualities that we perceive ourselves to be. And if we don't like uh, what we're seeing, realize that we have the power to choose differently, that we're not stuck with anything.
Um, that brings up a question for me. Uh, Assumptions and beliefs and the script already being written. How does this all fit in? If a script's already written, we're not changing the script. We're choosing a different script depending on our
Well,
assumptions.
um, I'm going to say yes. What you have to realize is uh, whenever you say the script is already written, what do we mean by that? The end result is determined. Okay. How and when we get there, that's in flux. So you are what you are. Uh, if we look at the human, we'd say you're a boy can pretend that he's a dog, but all his pretense doesn't make him into a dog. So the script is written. You are part of that oneness. You are deserving of love. There's nothing wrong with you. So that's given. The end result is there. So from that standpoint, yes, the script is written, but how we choose to get there and when we choose to get there, that's something that we uh, have say so. In that one example uh, of that discreation, whenever I was over there, I didn't have to come back. I could have said, I'm chucking it. I'm cutting the silver cord. I'm out of here. But uh, I wouldn't have achieved the, I wasn't at the final lesson. I wasn't there because I just wasn't. I still had some things I wanted to experience, some things that we wanted. I don't know. The thing that we value is experiential learning, not secondhand learning. We've come here for the experiences. We wanted to know what it feels like to love someone or to help someone or to see someone's joy. Uh, so we wanted those experiences. So uh, the end result, you and I, our end result is given. It's in our future. You and I, we're no different. Okay, we're the same. It's just a question of when we, decide that we no longer want to play. It's interesting when we look at life between life regressions, and what we see is that people that are, when you're disincarnated, otherwise without a body, uh, and perhaps you're quote unquote on the other side, so to speak, uh, your awareness, your memory seems to be much, much more improved. And things that you thought were um, were things where you were a victim, you start realizing that you were uh, part of that puzzle and that you were there to learn. Everything becomes rather than a judgment, just a thing. What did I learn? What was I there to learn? What that experience? What was it trying to teach me? What was it was designed for? That's what everything becomes. And whenever you do that, you change your mindset from a earner to a learner. Before that, this creation experience, I was an earner. I wanted to earn and get the results that I had determined were predetermined. I wanted those results. When I was over there and I was told I have all the time I need, I realized that I was a learner and that I didn't have to struggle. I didn't have to worry. I was free to enjoy the journey as opposed to trying to short circuit it and discreate the idea. And uh, it's interesting that, uh, in one sense, uh, the protocol was right. I couldn't uh, discreate uh, the idea of my own existence because I didn't create it. Someone else did. Okay, I'll just leave it at that. That uh, I wasn't my own creation. Therefore, I couldn't discreate what something else had created or extended. So, uh, is there anything else? Otherwise, I'd like to maybe come back and try and wrap up something I think is important.
Um,
But
I don't
if
think we have
there's
any more
more,
questions, but I'm ready to. We'll wrap it up. We think we can do it in about
okay,
15 minutes, and
okay, that's fine. So I share these experiences not because I expect you to believe them, and not because I think my personal experience should become your truth. I share them to explain why I believe and why I believe in you. Personal experiences, especially moments of, I'll say maybe revelation, are personal. When you have one, you don't think, is it true? You know it's true. Not because someone told you, but because you lived it. Other people don't have that same certainty. For them, the information I share today is secondhand. It's a story someone else tells, and that's okay. The purpose of sharing these stories is never to say, this happened to me, so it must be true for you. The purpose is simpler than that. Okay. It's to offer you enough secondhand evidence, and in this case, personal secondhand evidence, to question the stories you've been told about yourself. Because here's what I've learned: most people don't reject new ideas because they're false. They reject them because those ideas fit old fear based beliefs they've already built uh, for their own self identity. They refuse to question them. Confirmation bias this idea, we talked about the placebo, the double-blind study. Confirmation bias is powerful. The mind will argue for its past rightness, even when that rightness is costing you your peace. So when I or someone suggests or tells you, change your assumptions, it sounds easy until you realize without believability, assumptions can't be really tested. You can't suspend your old beliefs long enough to try something new. No experience can rise to that challenge so that you can have those experiences. But why these stories matter is because they don't prove anything, but they provide some evidence that says maybe what you've been told isn't the whole story. So it's not presented as proof, it's not doctrine, it's but it gives you permission to say, maybe I don't have the whole story. Permission to ask, what if there's more to me than what I've been told? What if change actually is when I start looking at those assumptions and starting to put a little belief or faith so that I suspend my old belief enough to really give them some test. There's a well-known story. It's the Golden Buddha uh, in Thailand. Uh, Perhaps you've heard it. I don't know. But for centuries, there's a large Buddha statue that was believed to be made of clay. Okay. It looked like clay. It was treated like clay because it was clay, they thought. Then one day the monks were moving it. It was back in 1955, I think. And as they were moving it, the statue developed a crack. Well, the monks set it down and they said, well, here's the statue. It's been around for millennium and now, centuries, and now we're going to, we've maybe damaged it. And so they figured, well, maybe they better set it down and think about how to move it. That night, one of the monks, for whatever reason, he got up and he had started to look at that crack. And as he looked at the crack, he started to see that maybe there was something there beneath it. There was a little golden hint. Okay. And so he started taking a chisel. He started chipping away very carefully. And when that monk began carefully chipping away at the surface, they discovered that it wasn't clay at all. It was solid gold. It was like over 5 tons. The Buddha had always been gold. The clay was just a covering. Nothing had to be added. Nothing had to be fixed. Nothing had to be improved. All that was needed was a crack and a willingness to look a little deeper. That's how I see these personal stories. I'm not asking you to accept them. I'm not offering them as anything but a crack in the surface of what you've been taught to believe you are. If you decide to pick up the chisel, that's your choice. I don't have, and you don't have to smash anything. You don't have to force change. You just gently question what you've mistaken for truth. And as you do, something else happens. New assumptions start to feel possible. Believability grows. You give yourself permission to test instead of dismiss. As these experiences, uh, as you get those experiences, as it always does, those assumptions begin to move into belief. Beliefs generate more experiences. Experiences strengthen that belief. That's how that creation cycle works. And this is why I can say what I'm about to say now with complete confidence. I know that you're not the body. I know your consciousness. I know that you are energy. I know you remain exactly as you were created. Catch up to your future. There's nothing wrong with your past. There's nothing wrong about you. There's nothing to complain about on your journey. You're on your own perfect path. Whether you choose to explore this or not, it's entirely up to you. But I want you to know this. I will not mistake the clay for the gold. And that is why I believe in you. Not because I hope, but because I know what you truly are. So, namaste.
That was a beautiful wrap up. That was absolutely beautiful, Tom. Thank you for that.
Okay.
Our friend Adam wants you to know that he loves you as if you were his own grandfather.
Oh, okay. Well, we're both probably a lot older than we think.
Probably. So he wanted me to let you know that.
Oh, okay. Well, thank you.
Yeah, that was very powerful. Finish, Tom. Everything came together in just a beautiful, beautiful fashion. So thank you. Everyone pretty much agreed.
Okay. So,
All right. Do you have a hint of what we're going to talk about next week?
well, I do, but I don't. Next week, I think I've got some conflict. I don't think I'll be able to do it on Tuesday. But what I would like to talk about, if we don't do it next week, the following week, would be about sickness and why people are sick. And I think there's a lot of uh, problems, especially from spiritual types, about what sickness really is. And there's a lot of blame and guilt that we need to explore if that's really appropriate. So that's kind of where I think I'd like to go, is to explore this idea, the notion of fitness.
I like that.
Okay.
So keep me posted on your schedule. If
Okay.
not next week, we'll pick it up the following week.
Okay. Yeah, and then just to let you know, after that, I'm going to be gone for out of the country for about a month or so. So, um, but we'll see what we can do.
Sounds good.
Okay.
Okay,
All right.
Tom. Thank you very much, my
Very
friend.
well. Thank you. All right.
Guys, I will see you at 5 o'clock in the morning. Everyone have a good night. Take care.
Bye now.